Hello, my guest today is Dobie Maxwell. Dobie, welcome to the show.
Kevin, it's a pleasure having you. It's on my list of credits now in my career.
Oh, is
I
that right?
appreciate it.
Fantastic. We can check that one off then. Fantastic. All right. Well, Dobie, I want to dig in today and really talk to you a lot about diabetes, but let's back up first. Tell us tell us a little bit about yourself. I understand you've led a pretty interesting life, and let's start at the beginning.
They say difficult childhoods make interesting adults, and I am one of the most
Yeah.
interesting people around. And I've been a stand up comedian since 1985 full time. And people that aren't comedians mistakenly think, oh, it must be so joyous and wonderful to be a comedian. People are comedians in the first place because what I call we are dented cans. Didn't get enough love at home, so you have to go out in front of strangers and get that whole thing. So, yes, it was rough life. Everybody's got their problems. I don't know why some of us get a bigger scoop of them than others. I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My father was a biker. He rode with a motorcycle gang. My mother was a drug addict. She abandoned our family when I was about 5 months old. And I have an older brother and older sister. So I was raised by my paternal grandparents. And I've been on my own since I was 17. And you make decisions when you have no one to go to that you regret severely later. And you go back and, that's the knowledge I had at the time. So I turned out okay at this particular point in life, but man, I sure had a rough road. But people say, "Oh man, you make me feel good about myself. Therapy's $200 an hour. Your comedy shows $20. I save money."
There you go. Save money. Yeah. All right. So no, that's what I meant by kind of a colorful background, right? So you said your dad was in a motorcycle gang,
Yeah.
your mom was a drug
Hmm.
addict, you were raised by your grandparents, and you described yourself as a dented can,
Yes,
right?
sir.
And that's what led you into comedy, right? And I think that folks may have an awareness that a lot of that comedy, right, comes from a place of pain, but you make it possible for folks to laugh and to have an outlet for things that would be otherwise uncomfortable. Is that a fair way of
That's
describing
a
that?
very fair way, Kevin. I'm glad you put it that way. I think what it is, the laughter is the best medicine. That's an old saying, but it wouldn't be old if it wasn't effective. And I think what
Yeah.
we do is we talk about our own pain. It helps others heal, and it's very therapeutic. But life throws curveballs, as I like to say, and you got to keep swinging.
Life does throw curveballs, and I love that analogy. You got to keep swinging, right? Because the alternative's not much fun.
No,
All right, now you've gone on and had a successful career as a comedian. So talk to us a little bit about the life of a comedian, because like you said, a lot of people might think, "Oh, that sounds fantastic. I'd love that.
well, in
What a great
in
career, right?"
theory,
What is the day to day?
I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
what's
in
that look
theory,
like?
like communism, it looks really good on paper. Then you try to execute it,
Yeah.
and then it doesn't happen. You're in a different town pretty much every night, if not every week. And I started full time. I was probably 22 or 23 years old, and it's wonderful to chase the country and see North Carolina, where you're located. I saw all
Yeah.
48 lower continental United States before I was 30 years old, and it's just been a fabulous learning experience. But as far as health wise goes, it is absolutely the worst you can think of. Most people, normal people, I say, drive about 30 to 45 minutes to work an 8 to 10 hour shift at a given normal job. Well, comedians, we drive 8 to 10 hours to work a 30 to 45-minute shift. So you're sitting in the car for 8 to 10 hours a day, not every day, but usually at least a couple times a week. And then your diet is mostly what fast food joints open in the town that you're in. And the heaviest thing I lift is a microphone every night. So over the years, in your 20s, you're kind of naturally in shape. And by the time I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in my 40s, and I think, wow, did I let myself go? I sure did. And it happens to everyone. The American diet, quote unquote. I think many of us are suffering, and that's why you have a podcast because there are millions of us in the same predicament.
That is absolutely true. That is why I have this podcast, and there are millions of us in this same predicament. So you described this being in a car, sitting, and we all know that that's, I think by now we all understand that that's a very unhealthy posture. Sitting in a car,
Hmm.
just there's no way around it. If you're spending tons of time in a car, that's sitting alone just by itself is bad for us. Sitting while driving, most of us are in that hunched over position, not a great posture. And then you mentioned the diet, just grabbing things typically fast food, right, while you're on the road. And I would imagine that if you're mainly doing comedy clubs or bars and things of this nature, so is there also an unhealthy side of that? The fact that you're probably up late at night for these shows. There's alcohol there. I imagine once upon a time that would have been a smoky room. Probably not so much now. But
That's an excellent question.
what about that piece of
That's
it?
an excellent question. I want to go back a little bit though and emphasize that stress is part of the driving. Not just I mean just the I have to
Mm,
get to the town. I started, yes, I'm old. I started before the internet. and we had to get to the town. And there's a thing called the Rand McNally Atlas, which
Yeah.
kids under 30 now, what is that? It's actually, you have to find your way to a certain town. And sometimes there are pay phones. I'm using a foreign language here, and you call the place. How do I get there? Turn left where the old restaurant used to be. And that was a big stressful
Right.
thing to get there. So not only that, we get to the gig, as you said, I am not an alcohol drinker. I never was. I'm not judging anyone who does.
Okay.
Moderation is something that a lot of people cannot practice. I didn't think I could. I didn't want to risk it. I chose not to. A lot of my comedian friends, you have a good show, you celebrate. You have a bad show, you drink. It's freely available. It's a potential problem that I chose not to go down. Doesn't mean I'm better than anybody else, but that's a good question that you asked. And yes, the whole smoke filled room. There's got to be some lung damage, because for many years before they banned smoking, I would be in
Yeah.
those smoke filled rooms, breathing in all the cigarette smoke. Never smoked a cigarette in my life. So all those things you
Right.
bring up, yes, I am a prime candidate for poor health residue, if that's the word.
Poor health residue. So let's pick that apart a little bit. You mentioned there in passing that you were diagnosed with type 2 diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to us about your obviously your health was poor, right? Had you been doing regular checkups? Did you see kind of this decline in health? What happened? What led up to that
Well, I'll
diagnosis?
tell you, the story is that comedians were self-employed, and self-employed people are in the 100% deductible, no insurance plan. And I'm not
Yeah.
condoning that, but it was true. And without being gross, or I can't put it any other way, one of my testicles swelled up to about 4 times the size of the other one. And it was on Father's Day. And this is something that gets your attention for a man. That's like, okay, if
Yeah.
both of them would swell up, that would be one thing. I might be proud of that. The second one did, so I didn't go to the hospital for a couple of days. And I finally went to the emergency room, and they had a pit crew of sat me down and took blood samples and said, "Mr. Maxwell, you have diabetes." And I'm thinking, I have what? Are you sure you have the right person? No one in my family had it. Your blood sugar is 500. Is that good? I had no idea about any of that stuff. So I sure got an education in a hurry. So I had gangrene on my testicles. I don't know how to say that in any other way, but that's what happened. And I had an operation. I was in the hospital for 9 days. It changed my entire lifestyle. I came out, they gave me the needle and the insulin, and they said, okay, you're a type 2 diabetic. And I had to, it was the one word I think after the diagnosis is fear. Oh my gosh, it's a death sentence. What am I going to do? So I walked, I exercised, I ate great. I completely changed my life around. Within 3 months, I was off all medications for diabetes. And that was good. And then what did I do? Oh, I must be cured. So I went right back into the old lifestyle that I had, because habits are hard to break. They just are. So that's a long answer for your one question, but that's kind of
No,
where it
no,
went.
that's not. Yeah, no, that's very interesting. All right, so obviously that was quite a health scare there. You get this. Now, what did you know about diabetes going into this? Did you have a frame
Less
of
than
reference for?
zero. That's what old
Yeah.
people get, and you lose limbs. It's that stereotypical, oh,
Yep.
diabetes, you're blind and you get amputations. Not a
Right.
pleasant outcome.
Right. Right. Okay, so you you have this pretty dramatic medical
To
event
say
on
the
Father's
least.
Day of all days,
Yes.
to say the least. Yes, land you in the hospital for a little over a week there, and you come out, and of course the prescription there is going to be insulin, and you, as you mentioned, needles. That doesn't sound fun, right?
No, I'm one of those. I mean, I think people have, I call it icky stuff. Different people have their icky stuff. Sometimes it's mice or spiders or snakes or
Yeah,
something. To me, it was
yours
needles.
yours is needles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can swallow pills. Some
Okay.
people can't swallow pills.
Yeah.
I can do that by the hundred. Needles, that
Right.
was my thing.
Okay. Well, I suppose before we go any further, let's define diabetes, and let's talk about diabetes, I guess, as a whole. And then maybe for, I think most of my audience probably has a pretty good idea of diabetes, and maybe have heard that there's type 1, type 2, or back when we were younger, that would have been juvenile diabetes. But talk
Yes.
a little bit about what diabetes is, and then the distinction between type 1 and type 2.
Well, it's amazing to me, coming from a layperson's point of view, that I'm sure not a doctor or medical. Your pancreas creates insulin, and it helps your blood sugar uh, levels in your body. And type 2 comes a little bit later. You can be insulin resistant, and you have to put in your own insulin. And I'm still trying to figure it all out. And there's medications, whether it's metformin, those kind of things. Type 1 diabetes, it manifests itself earlier. My partner on our podcast just my type, Sammy. She's 22 years old. She was diagnosed when she was 12. She's going to school getting her master's degree in diabetic health. So she educates me as to all the terms. I'm a layman out there, a comedian. I am the last person that's a medical thing and thinking about health and living with the American diet. So I'm coming at this from a whole I look at it as I am the spokesperson for the masses because there are millions like me that are undiagnosed, choose not to know, care. Oh, they wouldn't feed us anything unhealthy. The government wouldn't let us eat that. Fast food, it's got to be okay for you. There wouldn't be one on every corner. So it's a major education, a major lifestyle change. And I think we all have to self-educate ourselves. And I thank you for doing this podcast because I know it does. Because people can listen to it in the privacy of their own home or on their phone and get educated because it's painful to learn some of this stuff.
Yeah, it's certainly, and it's more painful to learn it the way you've learned it,
Oh
right? So
man,
it'd be
yes.
much less painful for somebody out here listening to this and saying, "Hey, that kind of sounds like me." Hopefully, not the one swollen testicle, but the lifestyle factors that lead up to this, right? And maybe we have folks, and very often people come into my coaching practice after having visited a doctor, and they're saying things like, "Oh, your blood sugar, and you're pre-diabetic, or we're not liking your cholesterol, and your blood pressure is getting high. You need to do something before I put you on meds, or I'm getting ready to put you on meds." And I'll get these folks coming in with kind of this medical scare, right? Not usually in your case as dramatic as that. Now, I want to go back. You had mentioned something very interesting, and I definitely want to pull this apart a little bit. So you said that, hey, I got this diagnosis, came out of nowhere for me, even though I think looking back at it, you could probably put
Oh,
together pretty
success leaves
clearly what
clues,
was,
and so does
yeah,
what would I get? Yeah,
100%.
it did leave clues.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now, but you said that in 90 days, you actually got off your meds. You had made some lifestyle changes. What
dramatic.
lifestyle changes specifically did you make?
Well, walking was a priority. It was Father's Day, and for me, Father's Day is very painful, and that's when that happened. So I went into the hospital and got that. So I'm thinking, okay, and they said it's not a death sentence. The doctor was actually very good in the hospital, and he said with diet and exercise, you can maintain. What did he say? You can maintenance wasn't the word. He said manage it, and in certain cases turn it around. And I was determined from that second on that I was going to turn it around. So I walked miles every day. It was sunny. I live in the Midwest, so it was a good time of year to be outside. I changed my diet dramatically, and within 3 months, my doses of insulin went down. And I decided, you know what? I'm just going to stop taking it. I think my doctor might be angry at me, but I don't care. And I went to my doctor and I said, I got off insulin. He said, hey, good for you. Most people can't do it. He goes, the trick is maintaining it. And he was sure correct. So I got off of
Yeah,
it
so
again.
let's talk about that. A couple of things there I want to
Sure.
mention. One is you'd already brought this first point up is so you're what,
I'm
59? Is that
59.
right?
Yes.
59,
I
right? And you
can't
were
believe I didn't think
diagnosed
I'd
when
make
you were
29, but yes.
yeah, and you were diagnosed in your 40s. So you've got decades of habits built in, right?
Sure.
Unhealthy habits, unfortunately, right?
Hmm.
The way you eat, and the sedentary lifestyle, and of course, your career doesn't really promote a healthy lifestyle. It's tough, but you had made all these dramatic changes, and of course, you had a dramatic change. You reversed, you turned around diabetes, right? But you were unable to maintain that. Now, do you think that because I think this happens a lot, people, especially we see it all the time every New Year's Eve, right? Folks go on, they have a New Year's Eve resolution and they're gung-ho, they're determined to do, and they say, okay, that's it, I'm only eating salads, I'm gonna hit the gym 5 days a week, when they're doing none of that, in December, and it's this very radical shift in their lifestyle that's just not sustainable. Do you think that had you done maybe smaller steps over time, that might have helped you get to a more sustainable lifestyle? Looking back at it now?
Absolutely right. That's an excellent point that you bring up. And also that the point that you coach people, I think is so important. I wish I would have had a coach at that time, whether a family, a parental unit. I've been on my own. And, some things that you make the decisions that you make with the knowledge and information that you have. The doctor stopped treating me because, okay, you're okay now. Just, keep it up. And I had no long-term plan. I had no goals and I slipped right back
Yeah.
in. So I think none of us can do it by ourselves. We do need a network, a team around us of people, a plan, knowing that it's a lifetime endeavor, not just, oh, I get my blood sugar down, I lose 20 pounds, whatever it is, and I can go back to doing whatever I want to. That's not realistic. I look back at it now and I'm ashamed of myself, but it's totally the way it happened. And that's why we're here, is to talk about real
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. Well, okay. So we are here to talk about real life, and I appreciate your candor here. So, what have you tried since that time when you just radically changed everything? Because you had that scare, right? Got yourself off, and then just over time slipped back into these. Because again, you had a lifetime of those habits before you had 90 days of this radical change, and you slipped back into those old habits of eating and probably less active lifestyle. What have you tried in the time since then to now?
Well, I will say getting the co-hosting job at Just My Type podcast has been a godsend. It's been a wonderful experience. It's the right place, the right time with the right people. My co-host Sammy is great, even though she's a lot younger than me and a type 1. She educates me, and we started in February of 2022. And in March, they had a step challenge. My birthday happens to be in March, so I couldn't do 2,000 steps. I mean, my tongue was hanging out. I thought, oh my gosh, I know I'm old now. And I worked my way up because they're all in their 20s and I'm pushing 60. I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to let these young punks beat me. So I worked my way up to 4,000 and then 5,000. And then on April 10th, I hit 10,000 steps. And as we record this, it has been 84 straight days of at least 10,000 steps in a row. Yesterday, I did 15,000. The day before, I did 18,000. I live out in a rural type area, so I can walk in the morning. So they say 21 days is a habit. What does it say? 90 days is a lifestyle. I am pushing on lifestyle. I'm not going to go back into it. I got a lucky break. This is great. I've dropped about 18 pounds. I'm eating better. I'm
Fantastic.
working with a dietitian from our website, Diet Strong, and it's been a life-changing experience. And the reason I am talking to people like you and talking in our podcast is I know I'm not alone. I am on the bottom end of millions of others. If I can do it, I'm not a doctor. I don't have privileged information. I am a regular person, but I have determination. And I think that's the number one thing is determination to educate yourself. There are enough resources like your podcast and other good reference points that we can all learn and dramatically change our lives in a short period of time.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you're very close to 90 days of 10,000 or more steps a
Correct.
day, and that's a fantastic goal, right? And I think that a lot of times walking gets kind of swept under the rug when we talk about exercise, forms of exercise, but walking is one of the most underrated forms of exercise on the planet. Everybody should walk daily, and that I think it was probably the wearables, right? The Fitbits and the Apple Watches
Sure.
of the world that all of a sudden made it really easy to count steps. It brought that awareness, and now all of a sudden we have this gold standard of walking 10,000 steps a day, and you can very easily track that over time. And hats off to you. That's fantastic. So it sounds like you're committed there. What you mentioned that you're working with a dietitian or a nutrition coach. What changes have you made there?
Well, I don't know what it is where you call it around the country. Some people call it soda. Some people call it pop. That was my addiction. I never did drugs. I
Mm.
never drank alcohol, but Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, Mountain Dew, that was my thing. So I dropped
Oh
that
my, yeah.
actually probably 2019, and that has been great alone. I was in Canada one time working at Christmas and New Year's comedy show, and there was a thing from the BBC that was on CBC, which is Canadian Broadcasting Network, but it was from Britain. The 10 worst things you can put in your body, and number two and number one in no particular order were diet soda and regular soda. And they said it doesn't matter the
Yeah.
chemicals or the fructose corn syrup, and they would never show that in the United States because of the lobbyists I know it makes billions and zillions and trillions of dollars, but the facts are facts, and so cutting that out was a huge thing. Eating more salads consciously, more vegetables, drinking more water on purpose. I feel better. I sleep better. I think clearer. I've done comedy shows in the past few weeks, and I'm clear on stage. It's been a noticeable difference, and even people say, "My gosh, you've been working out. You look great."
Yeah.
So that
Yeah,
feels good
that's
too, and
great.
that motivates you to keep going.
Yeah, so that's a part of that motivation cycle, right?
Sure.
Because a lot of times what happens is motivation, look, is a very fickle friend. It's here one day, gone the
Hmm.
next. But I think that when you have that motivation, you do something hard and you have success from that, when it gets hard the next time, your brain remembers that little reward. Oh, we were complimented. We felt good after that. And then I think what you're describing now is okay. I've been walking and I've been made that a regular part of my life. I'm got rid of the sodas a couple of years ago. I'm hydrating. I'm sleeping better. I'm working on stress management. Sounds like, and you're starting to experience this sort of stacking of these small steps, right? And it's having this compounding effect on your overall health and probably mental clarity, emotional well-being, things like that. Does that resonate with you? Does that
Oh my gosh,
sound right?
it's like a fire, firing a shot. Yes, it resonates. Here's another thing too.
Yeah.
I forgot to bring up. I think is important is pre-planning your destinations. The dietitian I work with is absolutely fantastic. She's a wife and a mom, and she said you didn't have a mom. I'll be your surrogate mother. She's very good. And in my business, I have a lot of like lunch and dinner meetings with people, with
Mm-hmm.
booking agents and with other people, and you're going to a place that that serves the butter burger and the nastiest thing for you. And the habit is, well, if you're going there for 30 years, you're going to order the butter burger. And she said, I'm sorry, you have to break the trend. So she'll go online and look at the menu of the restaurant that I'm going to go to and said, okay, they do have a salad. They do have maybe a BLT, and she'll pick something for me. So I know when I go in that restaurant that even if I don't talk to her, I will look up the menus now and plan a meal that I'm going to order. Does that make sense? And I never would have
Yeah.
thought of doing that. I never did that before in
Yeah.
my life. And I thought everybody's going to make fun of me, and they haven't. Oh wow, hey, that's great. Hey, you're looking really good. What are you gonna? And they're even helping me. Well, here's a salad here. That dressing might have a few more calories on it. And once you tell everybody else in your life, I think it's a good valuable tip, in that they'll coach for you. Hey, you can't have that. Hey, come on now.
Yeah.
Because it's
Yeah.
easy. We're all human. We crack. Oh, I was good. I'll just have a little whatever the treat is, and the treat is okay. But when it becomes a habit again, sometimes we need to say no once in a while.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I love that. And certainly thinking ahead and planning ahead for nutrition
Oh
is a
man,
big part of being
works
successful.
great.
Love that. Yeah, love that your dietitian is looking ahead for you at
And I never
menus
would
and
have
saying,
thought of that
okay, here are
either.
some good
So
options.
hopefully somebody
Yeah.
listening here could get, oh boy, that's because you're going. There's a lot of temptations at places like the all-you-can-eat
Mm-hmm.
buffet. Well, I had a plate of salad, but I had 14 ice cream cones on the way out too.
Yeah, yeah, you negated the benefit of that salad with the 13th ice cream cone, I'm sure.
Yep.
So what just for folks that don't know, I think people probably understand, okay, diabetic, got to avoid sugar, and we talked about soda and the high fructose corn syrup, and it's in everything, added sugar. What specifically what are you trying to eliminate, and what are you trying to focus on diet wise these days?
Well, I think a myth, and then I'm learning more as we do our podcast, is it's not that you can't have a carbohydrate. It's balance and moderation and portion size and consistency. They say, people that they diet between, Christmas and New Year's. It's what you'd eat between New Year's and the following Christmas. You can have some Christmas cookies. It's okay. It's not going to kill you, but it's a long-term thing. And I really think there needs to be, again, a plan, people around you, accountability, focus, education, all those things that we think we don't like. That body that it's at rest tends to stay at rest, but a body in motion tends to remain in motion. This has only been, we're talking 3 months. I feel a life changing positive effect, and I'm just beginning. I can tell you now on record, Kevin, I am never going to go back to that sedentary lifestyle ever again. I might get hit by a truck on one of my walks, but you know what? I'll die doing the right thing.
I absolutely love hearing that, right? That's right up my alley, 100%. So let me go back and talk a little bit about the carbs, because carbs have, let's face it, carbs have gotten a bad rap here recently,
Yes.
right? But when we were kids, fat was what was making us fat. Fat was evil. And so, we soon swapped out our butter for margarine and our whole fat milk for fat free and skim milk. And we bought all the fat-free options on the grocery shelf. And then, of course, nowadays, fat's okay. It's carbs. Carbs are the problem. But I think there's a distinction here with carbohydrates. I think what happens is all carbohydrates get lumped together. But to your point, a Coca-Cola or a Pop-Tart is way different than a sweet potato or a bowl of rice, right?
Amen.
Those are different carbohydrates, right? And when we look at those heavily processed, ultra-processed carbs, those should certainly be avoided by everybody, whether you're, pre-diabetic or not, or have diabetes. But these wholesome carbohydrates, which we get from vegetables and starchy foods, things like that, are full of micronutrients, they're full of fiber and all these other health-giving benefits. So I think that the demonization of carbs is kind of a little bit overblown, as long as we're using carbs as just one thing. There are, not all carbs are created equal, I believe. So certainly, I know that a big part of your diet then would be prioritizing those healthier carbohydrates. Is that fair? That
That's
probably goes
way
for all
fair, and that's
diabetics.
exactly right.
Yeah,
And the demonization, I think, is a perfect word to use there, because
yeah,
again, human nature being what it is, we all want the easy, quick, simple solution. Well, if I cut down carbs, I'll be in perfect health, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Well, no, exactly what you said. Sweet potatoes and, nature, God, whatever you believe in, I'm not going to get into that argument. But natural foods are programmed with a purpose. And it's when we as a species tries to mess with it and put different combinations of what nature did is where we go wrong. Like you said, Pepsi, you look at that, or Coke, whatever. I'm not trying to take any brand out, but you look at what's in that stuff and the mass consumption of it. I am ashamed of myself, and I'm really mad at whoever lets it out there and doesn't tell us, hey, this stuff is dangerous. You can have a
Yeah.
treat. I had 10 a day, and I'm not exaggerating. I'm driving in a car for 8 hours.
That's more than a treat. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you had mentioned earlier, there's millions and billions, trillions of dollars in big agriculture, big food businesses. And these food companies, whether they're soda or these other ultra processed food companies, they spend billions of dollars. They hire PhD chemists to concoct these very, very hyper palatable foods that they know what they're doing. These are
Oh, yes.
triggering all, they're pulling all of the levers on us biologically, right? You're biologically designed. Oh, that's sweet. That means it's got carbs. I can store that as fat, which evolutionarily speaking would have been a very good thing. Your body would love to have that, right? And so these companies and these smart scientists, they understand that. And so they're engineering this food, unfortunately, not for, bioavailability or to optimize the nutritious value of this food, but rather for it to taste good, for it to trigger. And they have these words like bliss point when they describe how sweet and the texture of foods are.
Hmm.
And they're all engineered to make us overeat these because, of course, that helps their bottom line. But the bottom line is we have traded this convenience of this ultra processed food for our health, and these types of lifestyle diseases are the outcomes of that. All right, so Dobie, I want to switch gears a little bit because you've been a type 2 diabetic here for over a decade. And talk to us a little bit about after you had kind of been diagnosed a diabetic and you were a diabetic, how did that change your identity? Did you take that on as a part of your identity? Well, I'm a diabetic now.
Funny that you bring that up. I did not. Maybe I read too many Tony Robbins books and self-help and positive thinking. I said I've been diagnosed with type 2. I never let myself say I am a diabetic. And I know that's probably cheating myself. Maybe I still ate poorly and look in retrospect, but I never get, I have this. I was diagnosed with it. I am in the process in my mind of reversing it. And I know that might sound corny or sappy, but you asked the question, and that's where my mindset was and still is. But now I have a much better.
Fantastic. Yeah, because I think,
I'm saying,
yeah, no, that's a much better
yeah,
outlook. Yep. When we say that, hey, I'm diagnosed with this is something that I have, as opposed to this is something that I am. And I think a lot of people identify with medical diagnoses now. Oh, I'm a diabetic. I'm a hypertensive. I'm obese. Things of that nature. And of course, I think that comes with a whole host of problems that we need to unentangle then to start to get help to substitute that mindset with a healthier, more positive mindset. So we mentioned your podcast a couple of times, Just My Type, and that's a kind of a play on words, right? Because you got the type 1 and
people
the
thought it
type
was a
2
dating
diabetic there.
podcast. Something
It sounds like it could be,
it could
right?
be, yes.
Yeah. So what is the future of that? As are you chronicling as you go along, kind of your health transformation as
Yes, and
you
that's kind of
go
what
through
what
that?
the podcast has turned into from my point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And again, for people that are listening and don't know, type 2 diabetics are about 9 out of 10, 90% are type 2. Like I said, adult onset diabetes is what it was called, not type 2. Like I say, juvenile diabetes used to be what's called type 1. The terms have evolved as the disease has evolved. And there's pre-diabetic. There's 37 million people with diabetes in the United States and about 5 million in Canada and about 440 million, I think, worldwide, which is just staggering. And the
Wow.
numbers are not going
Yeah.
down. It's a poor
No, they're not.
lifestyle and diet. And again, I'm not trying to scold anybody, but my journey from a type 2's point of view, numbers are numbers. I'm 9 out of 10. Nothing degrading about type 1, and it's a whole different thing, but in many ways diet and exercise so important. The fundamentals that we just got through talking about, planning your life, planning your diet, forming a community. I'm a comedian and a radio person, and the people from our company said, I was doing a show with another guy, a radio friend of mine had type 1. And he said, I liked you because you were light and you had fun, but you didn't make fun of diabetes. So many things are clinical and boring. That's why I like what you're doing. You're talking about real people and real situations. I mean, we don't want to be made feel guilty. Well, you don't eat right and you don't exercise and you're a slob and all. Well, okay, well, maybe those things are all true, but I don't want to hear people say it. So what do kids do? They rebel. And adults are the same way. Well, you're not going to tell me what to eat. You can't tell me that I can't enjoy my life. No, but when you're like me and you're in a hospital getting gangrene scraped off of you, it's a different thing. It manifests itself in different ways. One of the doctors I work with had a really interesting point. He said, what happens is, he said, there is prevention, but then when an event, call it an event, he says, like a boat crashing up against the rocks. He goes, when that happens, then it's too late. You want to get to the point before the boat crashes. So if people are listening, you can start exercising today. You don't have to walk 10,000 steps. I thought my heart was going to pop like a ketchup pack that first day, and that was only 3-4 months ago. Work your way up. Park your car at the end of the parking lot. Walk into the store. Little things like that. You can do it. You don't even have to tell anybody else that you're doing it, but do it, and you'll feel better. I guarantee it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you'd mentioned a couple of the really big ones. If we can start small
Sure.
and build on that, certainly walking is a great place to start, or any kind of a resistance training or strength training program. Be fantastic. You mentioned hydration earlier on, and that's one that a lot of people miss, is just the simple act of drinking enough water a day, not soda,
And that's the
clearly.
thing, and I'm
Um,
learning too, like juices and things like that are not water. Water is water.
nope.
And well, I
Yes.
don't like water. Okay, well, do you like death? Maybe that's a little extreme,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
well,
Right.
water is the thing. That's what you have to drink that. Not coffee,
Nope. Yeah. Just water.
not a chocolate
100%.
shake. Well, there's water in it.
Unfortunately, not a chocolate
Yeah,
shake. Yep.
sorry.
So I want to go back to something that you mentioned a little, just a minute ago,
Sure.
and that's kind of the almost the fit shaming, fat shaming, and there's been kind of a backlash against that, right? There's the healthy at any size movement, and there's the, but I think my industry, being just the health and wellness and fitness and nutrition industry, has done a poor job really of reaching out to the people that need us most. I think that this industry is guilty sometime of assuming that everybody's a fitness fanatic or everybody's a health food freak, when that's not the way most people are, right? Most people are just trying to go through their lives and do the things that are important to them. And for us to speak to people like yourself, to people who are struggling with health, or maybe just don't have just aren't aware of the severe ramifications of their lifestyle, right? Maybe they're like you, they're just kind of going along, well, I feel okay, until one day you don't, right? And so that brings me to kind of that discussion of making that change, right? There's a number of reasons humans change their behavior. One of them is a alarming event, and clearly you had an alarming event, and that's what started the change. But really, this change, that's taken a couple of years now to manifest into a more permanent change. And I think that what happens is a lot of times people want to change, or their motivation for change comes from this insecurity or this fear base or this kind of self-loathing even, right? Why am I like this? Or, I don't, I don't want to be fat. I want to be thin, or I don't want to feel this way. I want to feel this way. And so they start this health journey from this almost this place out of insecurity or of maybe even self-disgust. And while that could be a very powerful motivator in the short term, it certainly isn't a recipe or a prescription for long-term health and wellness. But I think, and you kind of touched on this, but I think when we make these lifestyle changes from a place of self-love and self-worth, as opposed to a place of insecurity or shame or whatever that is, right? That underlying feeling is, just realizing that we are enough, we are perfect right now, wherever we are, we're all going to start from somewhere, but start taking those small steps from a place of self-love. I love myself, therefore I want to take care of myself, as opposed to, you know, I don't want to be sick, obviously, and I want to move from state A to state B, and I can give myself the grace to make this a lifetime journey, as opposed to, you had already mentioned, well, I tried to change everything all at once and it worked until it didn't. Does that resonate with you? Does that sound fair?
It sounds more than fair. I think what you just said, it works until it didn't. It works until I didn't. because I wasn't educated
Mm,
and I assumed, well, I'm okay now. I'm just going to stop and go back. The
yeah.
human body was designed to move. And I think in the modern era, there are good and there are bad in everything, but YouTube is a wonderful resource because as I'm walking, I
Mm,
watch YouTube videos about health, and a lot of the same themes come up over and over again. Start small. Don't self-loathe yourself. Okay, you let yourself get out of it. It's the American lifestyle for sure, which that lifestyle is spreading all over the world, and with minor changes consistently over a reasonable amount of time. Say it took you 10 years to get X amount of pounds overweight. Your job wears you out. You have a family. You don't have time. Well, you need to make time. Is that 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes? I can't say what the exact number is, but there really are, if you're motivated to do something, you will find the time to do it, no matter what it is. And I think people like myself and people like yourself, the coaching people, if you put your mindset to, I'm going to get to be the best that I can be at whatever age I am. 50 is a big age, and you talk about being over 50. Well, I've paid my dues. I can do anything I want right now. I'm sorry. You have different choices. You have different pluses and minuses, but over 50 is, it's not just a time to coast. You still need to do the things
yeah.
that a lot of us didn't do in our 30s and 40s. And I am the most guilty. I'm raising both of my hands because I'm guilty as charged. But I'm turning it around as I approach 60, and I'm feeling as good or better than I've ever felt in my entire life. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. And I know someone listening could do the same thing and more.
100% with you. I often tell people, a little over a decade ago, I was as unhealthy as I've ever been in my whole entire life. And today at 58, I am healthier by all standards than I've ever been in my life,
Hmm.
right? So I'm the healthiest, strongest, fittest I've ever been. And this show basically is to help rail against the common narrative of this inevitability of it. Now, look, aging is in fact inevitable. We all have the same end in front of us, but that common narrative of, well, it's just all downhill from here, and I'm just might as well let myself go, and these achy knees or this bad back or this pot belly, whatever it is, right? This poor health that I keep getting. Well, that's just because I'm aging, right? But so much of that is lifestyle driven and within our control. And I'm here to say that my belief is that a healthy, active, vital, vibrant life is way better than an unhealthy, sedentary life. And now that may not be true for everybody, but I believe it passionately, and so I'm trying to spread this to as many people as I can. And I feel like you're kind of in that same boat, right? Saying, "Hey, I was here. I'm on the journey to this thing, and it's life changing, and I'm passionate about it, and I want to share it."
Yes, and I think it is a choice that anybody can make, and a lot of people
Hmm.
don't. And it could be
Yeah. Oh
years
no,
or
100%.
decades that they don't.
Yeah.
And when they
Yeah.
do, it all opens up. The entire,
Yeah.
there's the old saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. The same thing with,
Yeah.
with what you're doing. We've never been uh, cross paths before, and I probably wouldn't have had I not got the podcast and started improving my own life. And now you're in my life, and hopefully we'll stay in contact after this. And I'll send people your way, and you'll send people my way, and it's a network of things. And without, I know it sounds like this guru wizard woo woo stuff, like somebody said, it's all woo woo. No, it's not. You choose your life carefully. They be able to say, be careful what you wish for, because you might get it. I'm
Yeah.
choosing a healthy lifestyle, as are you, as are the listeners, and I don't think that's a bad thing in the least.
No, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a wonderful thing. Yeah. And I think that a lot of people mistake that when we say choose healthy, that just means like this miserable existence. Oh no, well, I could never have this thing that I love, this food that I
No,
love, or I hate going to the gym and running on a treadmill for hours at a time. That's that's not required, right? So we're not saying give up the things that you love, but we're saying, hey, let's just find some moderation there. Let's find a way to incorporate the thing, whether whatever that is. Let's find a way to incorporate that, whether it's that glass of wine in the evening, that pizza, or that ice cream on the weekend. Find a way to have these things as a part of your life, but just make the dominant part of your life a little more health focused. Start adding in healthy things like water and having more vegetables, things of that nature, right? And start taking these little walks and build on
it's
that and see
it's
what
really funny. I
happens.
was working on cruise ships for a while, which I wouldn't recommend to my worst enemy. It might be fun to take it, but it's not fun to work
Yeah.
on it. And we got to eat anything we wanted as much as we wanted.
Mm.
Shrimp and steak and prime rib and all these wonderful things that you think, oh my God, to die for that. After a couple of weeks, it's like, I want a Big Mac. I want something else, something different. And again, that's human nature too. Like you just said, you can have your treats, whatever that is, a glass of wine, an ice cream cone, whatever. Well, I don't care what it is, but moderation is the key. And I think if you
Mm-hmm.
can learn to deny yourself a little bit, there's something disciplined about that. You enjoy it more. Change your lifestyle. There's many books, many videos, many people around you. If you don't like yourself, change it. If you're above ground, you still have an opportunity. And I'm not trying to sound like Zig Ziglar, these rah rah people. Someone saying, "Ah, you did." I was the worst example. Absolutely. And people are saying, I see a dramatic change in your life because I wanted to, Kevin. It took me. I wish I would have done it 30 years ago, but I'm doing it now.
Yeah. 100%. No, I love that. That you had mentioned, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. It sounds like you are where you're supposed to be on your life's journey,
Hmm.
and you've now found this thing, and you probably weren't ready for it earlier. You are ready for it now. It's appeared, and here you've got this platform, this podcast, the Just My Type podcast, that you can reach a huge audience, right? And kind of talk about your story and your mission, and share that inspiration, and start changing other people's lives. So yeah, that's great stuff.
And I think it's the I'm not Brad Pitt or the typical Arnold Schwarzenegger, whatever example you want to use of the super fit, uber perfect, above the average. I'm just a regular person, as are you, and I think we all are. And if we get in that mindset, it can be overwhelming, dramatic, mass change. But we have to fight all this the years and decades of advertising and
Mm,
you know big pharma, whatever you want to say. Oh, a pill will clear this up. No, you got to get out and move your butt. You do.
yeah, yeah, yeah. 100%. That's the best medicine is exercise and diet. And our medical system is, first rate and fantastic for acute illnesses. If you fall down and break your leg, they're really good at putting that back
Hmm.
together. But when it comes to these lifestyle diseases, it's unfortunately we're treating symptoms, and that's a big money racket there. And there's just not that much money in telling people, hey, let's walk, let's drink water, let's eat real food. So it's definitely an uphill battle. But people like you, I think, that are very, very relatable and are on this journey, have this mission to spread the word, I think are the real people that are out there making the change. So hats off to you for
Thanks,
that.
bud.
All right. Yeah, man. So Dobie, before we wrap up here, what's next for you? What's on the horizon here?
Well, I took a little break, unintentional, for COVID from touring, and I've been a performer my entire life, and I just got a chance to breathe a little bit and back up. This podcast has been a wonderful experience. I'd like to go out and educate and entertain. I love doing comedy shows. I don't necessarily like to travel, but now, like you said, I think I do have a mission, and it's a positive thing. People need to laugh, especially the world is crazier than it's ever been. And I think if I can have a message rather than "Hey, this is just funny," I have a renewed vigor in my entire life. So I want to perform, and I'm also writing a book about my 30 years in the business. I've worked with a lot of famous people, and people like to hear stories about famous people. Are they nice? Are they not nice? So, not trying to do that too.
Oh, fantastic. Now we haven't mentioned this, but you're already an author, is that right?
Yes, my best friend since we're little kids. Did you have a best friend growing up? Most people do,
Sure.
boys and girls. What
Yeah.
was his name?
Oh yeah. Scott
Okay,
Flanagan.
Scott Flanagan. Picture of Scott Flanagan robbed a bank and tried to blame it on you. My best friend since we're little kids, Timbo, he robbed the bank he used to work at, not once, but twice. Tried to blame the second one on me. I had to wear a wire for the government to get him to confess that he did it, which he did. And it was the hardest thing I ever had to do. And all the time I was, it took about 7 years to play out. And I was still a comedian and still on the radio. I had a near death car accident. People say, man, your life story should be a movie. It should be a movie. So if you can sell it, I'll give you a nice commission. But it's a true story called Monkey in the Middle. This is the name of the book.
Monkey in the middle. That's right. Yeah. Okay. Well, Dobie, how can people connect with you? What's the best
The
way?
best way is Dobie at justmytypepodcast.com. That's our podcast website. I promise you, I will answer every one. Please give a episode or two a listen. Even if you don't have diabetes, you know someone that does. We talk about healthy things. We like to do it. Again, we have fun. We don't make fun of anybody. We don't shame anybody. And it's been really well received. So I thank you for the plug. Thank you for having me on. And any way I can plug your work and your podcast, I'm happy to do.
Fantastic. Well, and before we wrap up here, what about social media? Can people find you on social media?
Yeah, I do a daily non-political chuckle just because I like people to laugh. So if you want to get on my list, I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn. What's the other one? Instagram. I'm a little old for that, but I do have an Instagram account. So mostly if you're over 50, just find me on Facebook.
Right on. Okay, and I'll make sure I put all those links into the show
Thanks,
notes
man.
here, and folks can find that here. So, Dobie, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show
Thank
today,
you. This
sharing
is
your
great work you're
story
doing.
with us, and you are a fantastic ambassador for healthy aging. Love your mission, love the work you're doing. Just really want to encourage you to keep it up, and wish you all the best in all your future endeavors.
Likewise, thank you. And Kevin, if I'm ever in North Carolina, I'm buying you barbecue on me. I'm coming through town.
All right, sounds like a deal. I'll take you up on that.